you have joined us today for the first time. Today, our last panel, we're going to speak about gender and investment in agriculture in the Caribbean. We are very lucky today to have the presence of our Minister Waldron, who is the Honorable Minister of Tourism, Industry and Commerce here in Guyana. And she has a very strong legal background. She has more than 23 years experience in the bar, including 7 years as a magistrate. Dr. Waldron, Minister Waldron, my apologies, was appointed to the National Assembly in August 2020. And under her portfolio of tourism, industry, and commerce, she overlooks the Small Business Development Fund, as well as a number of initiatives that are geared towards stimulating industry and commerce and opportunities for youth and women. We also have with us today a panel, we also have ASG Cox from CARICOM, and ASG Cox has a long and distinguished career with CARICOM and has been working very hard on this Agri Investment Forum. And he said earlier, we're finally giving him an opportunity to say some things. So we're looking forward to hearing from you, ASG. We also have 4 panelists with us here today. And very briefly, I'd like to tell you that our 4 panelists include Mr. Alistair Glean, who is the ICA representative in Barbados, and he's the chair of the CARICOM Business Development Thematic Group. He's been working for more than 20 years in the agriculture sector as a technician. He's also a farmer. He's been working for more than 20 years as well, Miss Abigail Lonk. And Abigail is the president of the Lonk Group, which works in a number of areas, including home care, oil and gas, and women's empowerment. She is a woman's entrepreneur, and she is part of We Lead Guyana, a non-profit organization that was launched in 2017. Online, we have 2 other panelists. One is Mrs. Hedda Rose Dunkley, who is part of the Jamaica Network of Rural Women Producers, which was established in 1999. And its mission is to be socially responsible and to create innovative ways that rural women can actively participate in entrepreneurship. And finally, joining us possibly from the farthest place is Dr. Nandini Azad, who is joining us from India this evening. I think, Dr. Azad, it is past midnight now. We really want to thank you for being here. Dr. Azad is part of the Indian Cooperative Network for Women, which was initiated in 1981. And this cooperative is in South India and really targets the poorest of women and helps to facilitate access to credit for the opportunities of new skills, learning, and securing employment. More than 1.5 million women have been reached by this organization and are part of their micro-entrepreneurship skills. So we will hear more from Dr. Azad very soon. Without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to ASG Cox, who will give us a few brief remarks to put us into the context of the conversation we will have today. ASG Cox, over to you.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, I realize it's just after lunch, but that has got to be the most anemic response I've ever had in my life. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, now it's starting to sound like we're waking up. All right. Welcome and thank you very much, Madam Moderator, Dr. Smith, Minister Waldron, members of the Diplomatic Corps, members of the International Development Partner Community, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, young people, all a pleasant good afternoon to you. My task here is really to offer some words of welcome to these deliberations this afternoon, but it would be remiss of me not to make some observations, some brief observations as we start to engage in this in this necessary dialogue. Now, one of the things that I wanted to point out is that, for example, as we go forward as a community, one of the things we have to recognize is this old maxim: individually we go fast, together we go far. In other words, as we move forward, this has got to be a process of partnership, an effective partnership. It's ironic that women in agriculture, by all the data that we have seen, range anywhere between 40 to probably 55% of the farming community. Yet still, the obvious inequalities between male and female involved in agriculture ranges anywhere between, the gap ranges anywhere between 20 and 30%. We have to recognize that there are some real issues here that we have to confront. We have to look at some of the matters about access to land, effective access to finance. We have to look at how we treat with technology as we go forward, because the reality of life is that as a region, if we're not careful, we'll be deemed absolutely anachronistic, being out of step and out of time. And it seems to me that as a sector, we are looking at reducing our food import bill by 25% by the year 2025. The food import bill now is just around $6 billion per year. That means that if we're to reduce it by 25%, you're talking about a reduction of $1.5 billion. Now, as Vice President of Ghana, Barrett Jagdeo raised yesterday, that would, if you are assuming a 25% return on investment, that is assuming an investment of anywhere up to $7.5 billion. That is not something that is gender specific. It has to be gender neutral. For that to work, it has to be all hands on deck. And that is just a functional reality. I mean, I'm buoyed by the presence of so many young people in this room today, because it does all go well, at least in terms of the interest in this area. And one has to look forward to how we'll treat with it. But nonetheless, as we do look on these issues, there are issues that are cross-cutting. Pray that last name is not gender specific. The issue of land titling is not. And the use of technology as we move this sector forward is definitely not. So as I close now, I would look to you and the panelists to guide us through this afternoon's discussions, because we need to look at this thing. How do we actually achieve the 25 by 25 reality? For us, this is not talking about Vision 25 in 25. It's not a slogan. It's a statement of intent, and I dare say it's an imperative. So as I yield to the chair of the proceedings, I do wish you absolute success in these deliberations, and I do hope to hear very frank and meaningful solutions being posited. Thank you very much for your indulgence.
Thank you very much, ASG Cox. We appreciate that. 25 by 25, how do we reduce our food import bill by 25% by the year 2025? That is the central theme of everything we've been discussing for the last 2 to 3 days. So with this said, I am happy and pleased to pass you over to Minister Waldron for her main address. Minister?
Thank you very much. and agriculture-related businesses with, I hope, a special view towards identifying the important constraints faced by women in the world of agriculture. I'm advised that research has shown that, like in many other sectors, there is a gender gap in terms of deriving benefits from agriculture. We are told that generally around the world, women, as against men, face 5 major obstacles that exacerbate gender inequality in agriculture. These obstacles are: 1, access to land rights; 2, access to productive resources; 3, the burden of unpaid domestic labor; 4, relegation to temporary, insecure employment and employment in hazardous activities; and 5, limited participation in decision-making. I do hope that as we can examine the extent to which these constraints are present or absent in our context and start to craft appropriate strategies to counter them. In doing so, we can in some measure rely on work that is being done by international partners, both intergovernmental and in the NGO sector. There are 2 types of initiatives that are peculiar interest to us. The first set of initiatives that can be useful comprise those of the voluntary sustainability standards, aimed primarily at the private sector, of which one of the best known, not necessarily most effective, would be the fair trade standards. The second set of initiatives are the responsible investment frameworks, more aimed at governments, but not excluding the private sector. It is my understanding that both the voluntary sustainability standards and the responsible investment frameworks may need to be supplemented in some cases by gender mainstreaming activities in order to effectively address the gender gap in agriculture. I know that the Food and Agriculture Organization has been instrumental in the development of a number of such standards, and I trust that our moderator would be able to utilize her vantage point in the FAO to focus some of our discussions today on how we can use these frameworks to our advantage. Here in Guyana, I think we have much to build on in order to achieve gender equality in the agriculture sector. We have strong land administration systems, we have an institutionalized cooperative sector, and we have a legal framework for occupational safety and health, among other features of our institutional framework. With appropriate attention paid to gender impact and gender mainstreaming in our policymaking, we can build on our institutional frameworks to attack at least 3 of the constraints that were identified in women in agriculture, namely land rights, employment issues, and decision-making. For example, here in Guyana, in several recent initiatives, such as the Black Belly Sheep Project and others, we have specified minimum participation levels for women. Of course, one of the principal issues that we are treating with is in this investment forum is financing, which has also been identified as a critical contributor to the gender gap in agriculture. Here again, what we need to do is, while we pay attention to financing as a whole, we must incorporate gender mainstreaming into policy making in order to achieve the gender equity outcomes. While I use Guyana as my frame of reference, this being a regional forum, it should go without saying that country by country, we must go through this process of examining our environment, identifying the obstacles to gender equality, and setting up systems to ensure that we eliminate them. One thing that I am personally aware of is that gender equality will not be achieved by accident. It requires deliberate interventions to make it happen. We therefore must consider gender impact in each of our policies. We must make sure that we put in place the initiatives to treat with them and we must monitor our progress with respect to achievement of fair outcomes for women. There is no debate that fair outcomes for women is to the benefit of society. I'm told of research by the FAO which suggests that if women had the same access to productive resources as men, their farm production would increase by 20 to 30%, leading to a 12% decrease in hunger. Ladies and gentlemen, our regional target is 20 by 2025. We aim to reduce our food import bill into the region by 25% by the year 2025. We have precious little time in which to work, and the study I just cited should confirm that what we should already know, which is that our countries cannot achieve our objectives without a full gender parity. I wish you a productive and rewarding session this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. Students here as well, a very good and a strong representation of students and young persons who are involved in agricultural entrepreneurial activities. And we're hoping to really hear from you today because your experience and what you have seen so far, I think, is extremely important to the conversation that we want to have today. I'm going to hand you over now to our first panelist, and that is Mr. Alistair Glean. Alistair, 5 minutes, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would like to recognize the Honorable Minister Cox, members of the Diplomatic Corps, my fellow panelists, the wonderful young people here this afternoon, the colleagues who are online, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I want to start off and recognize that I'm the only man on the panel, so we need some gender balance. And I don't want to pretend I know all the issues that the women in particular face, and that's why I have my other colleagues here. But I want to recognize something that ESG Cox started off by saying, all hands need to be on deck. We are trying to address this current target, 25 by 25. It's an ambitious target, but if we are to achieve it, we really need everyone to come on board. And women can and do play a critical role in the sector, in food production, in marketing, in trade, etc. When you go to the various countries, you think of Bees Ice Cream out of Trinidad, the Alliance of Rural Communities working across the region promoting chocolate production, Susie's pepper sauce out of Antigua, Erica's out of St. Vincent, Cacao St. Lucia out of St. Lucia, Abaconim out of the Bahamas, and so much more. All these enterprises are owned and managed by women. I just want to say that women do play a critical role. Women run big businesses, and we need to see their invaluable role in attaining this target. However, the reality is that, and I should also say there are powerful women in Guyana as well, Pomeroon, virgin coconut oil, Wadnet, etc. So I want to recognize them. But there are a lot of challenges that women face, as ASG Cox said. The challenges are not gender specific. It impacts on everyone across the region, whether male or female, youth or women. And as chair of the Business Development Group, I can tell you the issues when we face the issues, they're not gender specific indeed. I also provide support as ECA representative in Barbados to the Caribbean Network of Rural Women Producers. There are chapters all across the region. And one of our panelists, I believe, belongs to the Jamaican network, and she can tell you a bit more on that. And the women there are trying to get more active in business and trade, etc. And while there are chapters, for instance, in Grenada, where women are actively trading with hotels and trying to address import substitution, there are other women across the region that are struggling to get up to that capacity. I'm saying all this to say that there are women at different ends of the spectrum, but the issues plague all of us. And ultimately, I think that we need to recognize that for some of us, it's going to be a bigger challenge than others. And mainly we need to also look at the fact that entrepreneurship is critical in this discussion. This is not for everybody. We need to get the strong entrepreneurs on board, persons who are willing to have that drive, that passion to produce and to get into trade. Some women admittedly would trade for the domestic market, some would do it on a subsistence level. But the reality is, if we're talking 25 by 25, we need everybody on board, but we need those persons who will look to actively engage in inter-regional trade and who are going to get really passionate about ramping up production and meeting market requirements. Now, I think I should get straight to the more hardcore issues and recognize that if it is that we are really to support women to be more active in the trade and to get women more mainstream, there are some key issues that some of the agencies, that some of the investors have to take on board. We need access to information. Women need access to information. They need to know what are the opportunities out there. They need to know where the support in terms of capacity building, etc. Besides just general information specific to market entry requirements, market information, there are a lot of dynamic agencies out there that have mechanisms in place to support women, but we need to make that information available to the women. They need capacity building, whether in terms of to appreciate food safety standards, to enhance the quality of their products, etc. These are some of the support mechanisms we need to provide women with. They also need to have access, what we have always been saying for the whole week, access to financing, more affordable means of financing, on investment information. Now, I always ask myself, if I am an entrepreneur, whether male or female, where can I go to pitch my ideas, to get support, to get investment opportunities? Where? It's very difficult to identify these mechanisms, these portals, the angel investors, etc. Where can I get that kind of information? Also, additional support systems. We have the various market development agencies. I know NAMDEFCO is here, Expo, there are different agencies across the region, but we need to allow women to access them, give them more information on these entities. And something that we need to consider, insurance, financing. Women need to have access to these mechanisms. They exist, but we just need to make them more available and give women more access to them, to the information. I also want to point out that for a lot of women, some of them have the opportunity to focus on driving the industry, just like some of the women. But we also need to recognize that there are some women who have to be the chief, the cook, the bottle washer. They have to do everything. And it's really a challenge for them to have that balance. And that's where I think the development agencies can come on board and provide support to some of these women to help them to get up to scratch. I see the moderator looking at me, so let me close off. So I just want to say also that we can also have women mentoring other women. Just like we had Mr. Cho here of Cho's Enterprises talking about how we can support young entrepreneurs, etc. Women can provide support to other women who are coming up to help them build their capacity and get up to where they need to be. So I hope I have been able to just share a few things that will invite questions and further dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alistair. Very good. We look forward to some questions on many of the things that you have mentioned as well. I'm going to pass now over to Abigail. And Abigail, I think you want to speak a little bit about enhancing financing opportunities. So over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. All protocols being observed. I
I'm so honored to be here today with everyone to join in the conversation and to have a discussion on something that is near and dear to my heart. Now, what my bio wouldn't tell you is that I grew up in the rural countryside of Expo Coast, where agriculture was and still is our way of life, where I've witnessed my mother, my aunts, my neighbors' wives, and their daughters attempt to pursue the path of agriculture or agro-processing. And for the past 6 years with my NGO, I've watched in awe as women battle to take their place in business and within the agriculture sector. Now, there are many statistics that are out there for women in agriculture and the part that we play in this sector. It says somewhere that 58 million women in Latin America and the Caribbean are responsible for food security and preserving our biodiversity. However, Women's World Banking has categorized women's contribution in agriculture as still being invisible today. Women own fewer assets. We have less access to inputs and services over our male counterparts. And to further complicate things, equal access to resources does not assure equal returns for women farmers. And this is evident today, whether it's in Guyana or the Caribbean at large. I believe it was last year, the Minister of Agriculture of Chile said, women play a key role in rural development, making a significant contribution to the local economy, fostering the eradication of poverty, confronting climate change, guaranteeing education and nutrition for their families, and strengthening the social fabric of society. Now, we all know this is true. But in our economy, despite those facts, women in general continue to face a range of challenges, whether it's in our personal lives or in our attempts to create successful and thriving business. Now, I've been an entrepreneur for 12 years. I've seen the challenges across the board, though industry to industry, they may vary a little. Our struggles remain the same, whether it's access to capital, access to large loans, lack of collateral, limited access to assets, our daily strive to be mothers, wives, sisters, and friends, and still wear the hat of an entrepreneur. We leave nothing and no one behind. So, how do we enhance financial opportunities for women despite all of these challenges? We collect data. Data aids in our decision making, and it helps us to form the policies that we're talking about while we're here at the conference and on our day-to-day basis. There are countless of times when we put action into place, but we have limited data to support what we're trying to do. Data can also provide the specialized agriculture and business training opportunities that women really need, and not what we think would help them. We also have to provide intensive mentorship and exchange programs throughout the Caribbean that will support women, and it needs to be a hand-in-glove thing. It needs to be both by the government and non-governmental institutions, because we cannot succeed independent of each other. My organization, Relate Caribbean, has been partnering with ICA for the past 3 years to provide mentoring support for women here in rural communities of Expo. We're just about to launch in Berbice and in Linden, and these are the initiatives that we're talking about that's needed here. Data can also provide financial opportunities for all women in agriculture by providing appropriate loans and credit policies, especially based on where they currently are in their businesses. You know, financial institutions have to understand that women do come for loans and other means of financial support based on what they have or their sources of income. And many times those sources of income may not be the traditional ones that we're all accustomed to. We also need to understand with financial institutions that women have a lack of collateral, or they just have weaker collateral than women. When I started my business many years ago, I started with 1 month's salary, a hope, and a dream. But throughout the years, I've been blessed with investors who have helped me, and they're not from traditional institutions. I've never gotten a loan from a traditional institution because when I started business, I had no asset. And I've seen programs come on board like Expo, that was introduced by the Caribbean Export Development Agencies and the CDB. And I wish this was available to me when I started business, but I do want to say I am glad to see things like this come to play.
Also, with data, we can also look at other financial opportunities to support women. We can start teaching women financial literacy, saving and investing, things that I didn't know of when I started business. We can provide alternative payment systems and repayment plans for women. And we can also look at having a dedicated financial institution that specifically targets women for funding. You know, what works for John, who may have a tractor as collateral, may not work for Carla, who is doing food processing, or may not work for Sita, who has a craft shop. And finally, data. We can use data for non-traditional ways to deliver our support for women in agriculture. We can get on the ground and find women in areas where our gadgets and our data, our Wi-Fi, don't matter. So the question is, as we go forward, how are we effectively meeting the financial needs of the women that require our help the most? Thank you.
Abigail, thank you very much. I want to thank you, first of all, for sharing with us a little bit of that personal story about the generations of women who you come from, who have been involved in agriculture and agriculture business. We want to move now on to our third speaker, Mrs. Hedda Rose Dunkley, who is online. Hedda, can you hear us?
I'm hearing you well. Are you hearing me? Dr. Smith? Are you hearing me, Dr. Smith?
We can see you.
Are you hearing me now?
Very good, yes.
Wonderful. Okay, I'll just go ahead then. Once again, good afternoon, Dr. Smith, the Honorable Minister Walrond, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of our President, Mr. Misha Lee, and the over 700 women of the Jamaica Network of Rural Women Producers in Jamaica, thank you for the opportunity to engage on the topic, technical trainings, extension services, and production inputs. This topic could have been taken from many angles, but what is a surety is that the need for technical services, extension services, and production input is paramount in any farming operation. What we need to focus on, however, is how does this impact our men, women, and youths in a more meaningful way? I'm going to speak through the lens of an input supplier, a previous job that I once held, as it pertains to technical trainings, extension services, and production inputs, specifically agricultural inputs required for a balanced and healthy crop season. I believe that this exposure will allow us food for thought on how to exploit the access we have to private and public sector entities to bring about value for economic growth for men, women, and youths. I'm going to take this conversation from the perspective of showing the link between the trainings, the extension services, and the production inputs, and how this has benefited farmers during COVID-19. I'm going to end with an input of a provocative charge to both private and public entities in order to balance and work together to provide more technical trainings, extension services with one clear objective, which is a farmer's success through access to information and production inputs that will bring profitability and viability to one's farming operations in the context of men, women, and youths. Now, over the past 7 years, we have seen a growing trend that input suppliers are using more technical trainings as a selling tool to get their message of their products into the nook and cranny of Jamaica's agricultural landscape. Of course, with COVID-19 coming on the scene in the past 2 years, input suppliers have had to pivot in how they got their information about their products directly to their target market, which is ultimately the farmers. And that pivot had them moving from face-to-face to using platforms like the one that we're currently using today. This format of technical training has had marked increase actually over the past 2 years, as one input supplier indicated that they moved their engagement from hundreds to thousands and also across geographic spaces. We're talking about reaching the region, Canada, USA, and Europe, where tuning in to these technical trainings was very evident. Noteworthy is that suppliers had to meet the farmers at their convenience. And this meant that their technical trainings had to happen in the evenings or after the farmer had left their fields. These flexible hours went over very well for the farmers. In addition, some input suppliers uploaded their trainings to YouTube, which meant the farmers could access at a later date or time. Input suppliers were able to fill a gap with very little build out or infrastructure, reaching a wider audience and therefore moved to capture the farmers' attention. The main purpose of the training was to sell and educate farmers about their products and services, giving farmers an opportunity to ask questions and give first-hand information on products that would otherwise be sitting on the shelves or perhaps selling themselves. Now I move into the fact that input suppliers targeted extension officers as they saw an opportunity for greater reach by facilitating a trainer of trainer environment. They involved the Jamaica's Rural Agricultural Development Authority, RADA, which is a government's arm for extension services. The involvement of the RADA officers meant that they were able to stretch their human resource capacity because they were now reaching over 200 officers who became ambassadors for their products, new and existing. But the approach was not one-sided, as it created a win-win situation. Input providers now had a bigger training pool of persons, and extension officers got first-hand information from the providers, and therefore they were more informed when interacting with the farmers. This created a symbiotic relationship, as RADA themselves also sought to involve input suppliers in their programs and opportunities according to their own mandates and calendars. Now, Jamaica's agricultural landscape is built on extension services and has proven to be very impactful. As information become more available, and farmers become more exposed because of the access to information, their needs become more discerning. And this is where access to production input that work become even more important to a farmer. Time does not permit me to speak much longer, and so I'd like to wrap up by saying both input suppliers and extension services through technical trainings can provide the level of exposure required for production inputs that are tried and proven. A balance is, however, required between both the private and public sector to ensure that the farmer is not at a disadvantage and is not caught in best showmanship, but instead best product for a farmer's farming operations. This charge I would give both private and public sectors in order to achieve the 2025 objective of reducing our food import bill. Therefore, access to quality seeds, fertilizers, and pesticides, if they choose to use either, are working together for the benefit of our farmers. The JNRWP has been very pointed about the needs of its members and the trainings and access to production inputs our women receive. We have been recipients of good technical training, good support from of extension services from both public and private sector. We've also been recipients of excellent agricultural inputs. However, we charge that both the private and public sector work together to ensure the very best is offered to our farmers. I hope that my discourse with you this afternoon will spark some interaction, and my sharing will have further discussion, and I thank you for listening.
Heather, thank you so very much for your contribution. I am particularly interested in your point that farmer success and profitability is the key goal and objective of the training, of the input supplies. I also take the point that a strong voice by a group of well-organized farmers, in this case, women farmers, really helps to articulate the issues that you have, the needs that you have, and also articulates the success and your achievements. I wanted to quickly mention as well, there was a very good point made about entrepreneurship being vitally important. In other words, and including financial training. We're going to move very quickly now to Dr. Nandini Azad. Nandini, are you still with us?
Absolutely. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes. Could you be a little closer to the mic?
Where is the mic? Closer to the mouth. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smith. And I take this opportunity to express my deep appreciation to be on this panel today, and was very much impressed by the dynamic address of the Honorable Minister for Tourism and Commerce, Madam Waldron, and of course the Assistant Secretary General of CARICOM, Mr. Joseph Cox, apart from my dynamic fellow panelists, online viewers. Thank you, Ms. Smith. I'm Nandini Azad. I think I'm the only panelist who's out of the region. And I come to tell you the story of this amazing cooperative, 43 years old, which has given nearly $5 billion US dollars in small petty loans to farmers, to fishers, to vegetable vendors, small entrepreneurs with 90% success. No collaterals and group guarantee. Now, the point I'd like to say is that while we have a lot of macro advice that has gone on, and I'm very impressed with all of that, I think if we have to achieve the 25%, the focus has to be obstinately on women. Obstinate is the word, because as I see in the Caribbean region, while the gender gap, as the minister had mentioned, while it appears to fare well in the gender gap index, high gender parity, etc., but you go closer, and there's so much that while women contribute to the rural economy, that their own participation can be as low as 10% in some of the countries. As somebody said, it varies from country to country. I'd like to give you two important, hands-on examples of how we enhanced the digital financial training. I think that's very important due to the pandemic. There's been serious losses, death, as well as the downturn of the economy. And if you're talking about increasing it in 2 to 3 years to 25%, one of the first things you need to do is do en masse training of women in digital financial literacy. And we found that it was astounding. The minute you could, we had a training of trainers, and which went on to moving to the members, where illiterate women, semi-literate women, participated in downloading the apps for basic concepts and linking the apps to the bank account, etc. The digital money transfer component, introduction to payment apps and its functioning, introduction to mobile apps, that is NFT, ECS, etc. Download and installation of apps, how to deal with security aspects. The effectiveness of this workshop was very crucial because women could not loan, they could not take money, they could not, profit, they could not save. And this has revolutionized our work, which is already iconic and legendary. Because when poor women, you put technology in their hands, whether they are urban entrepreneurs or rural entrepreneurs, this is going to happen. The second thing that we did, we as barefoot bankers, we work in nearly 6,000 villages and slums of South India in the 4 states of Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh. We found that as barefoot bankers during COVID, we went village to village, and we had an award called the Corona Heroine Award, Warrior Award. It was very interesting that we picked up 1,500 members who in 37 years had never defaulted, never asked for a moratorium. And they started investing from $3 US 30 years ago to $1,500 US today, educating their children as engineers, as doctors, MBAs, nurses, and now employing other women. Now that is the growth strategy that they are employing. So the point I'd like to say is that one of the most important things we found in our gender equality strategy in agriculture was that we found in a study that we did for when we presented it to the World Farmers Organization, that due to our intervention, 40% of the women had got land titles. Owning a piece of land is not legal for a woman. It gives her the enthusiasm to produce. So if you want that production to go up to 25%, the first thing to do is to have legal reform wherein joint titles or single titles for women and women-headed households in many of the countries, including in Guyana, that there is a large number of women-headed households, transfer, provide them the access to land and see the wonders that women do. And we found that that profit had gone up 300 to 400%. Now, in terms of the Caribbean, even we find that a lot of the land titles in Jamaica, for example, I hear, I don't know what the numbers show today, but only 30% of the officially registered female farmers own only 11% of land. So that means that women are cultivating land that doesn't often belong to them. Secondly, even the loaning for women is very poor in the Caribbean, we heard. So why not start cooperatives like ours? Huge cooperatives, moving on to 1 million, giving 5 billion. And these CEOs are women, all are women, nobody is highly educated. They have cooperative, we are cooperatives, they're cooperative training, and we don't take collaterals. This is a whole structure, an innovative structure suited to women, so that women can access all these productive assets. Now coming to the training part of it, what I would say is the training has to be, at the policy level, at the medium level, at the grassroots level. The first thing you need to do is gender disaggregated data. And that is very important. I did a lot of training in the Asia Pacific. My pioneering work called Gender is More Than a Statistic showed that in the cooperatives of the Asia Pacific, not even 10% of women were in the decision-making echelons. How can you expect them when there are millions at the bottom, but the decision-making level, whether it is chairmen or vice chairman or board members, was very low. So I think the most important thing is to have, not look at men as the principal farmer, but to make sure that gender disaggregated data all over, whether in animal and crop production or in fisheries, national wealth is not fully understood as what women generate. So I think this is very, very important. And there's a grading in cooperatives. You can do gender disaggregated training. In NGOs, you can do that because you have to collect statistics, micro or macro, to do any planning. So I would say that both governments and non-government should get into this. Second is the technical training in cross-sectoral energies and coordination on agriculture, environment, livestock, fisheries, infrastructure development, education, and public health. So this is very, very important. Now, training in gender policies and plans for the sector, regional, country, and administrative. This should strengthen the strategic focus for gender equality in the agriculture subsectors. As somebody said, the plans are afoot, and this is very, very important. What about gender sensitization training to strengthen existing legal and regulatory instruments for providing access to productive resources for women, including the right and access to land titles, land, and also access to financing? There are so many laws and regulations on microfinance, etc., that in my country that has been done. Now, apart from all this, how is it we are going to reduce the barriers? Again, you need training workshops where you have to build skills, where people can look at what are the conditionalities. These poor women farmers don't have the time to do that. But the intermediaries, the mesos, the cooperative, the NGOs, the other institutions, government institutions, parastatals, can look at whether the requirements are putting off women. Are the cooperatives, do they know that many women till 40, in Asia Pacific, we found till 40, they were not able to get out from their reproductive roles? Are they looking at them in holistic roles and making the structures and so forth. Also, training in cooperatives, which is my strength. This is the area that we are the strength. We are elected members and elected office bearers of all the top and the oldest cooperatives in the world. Very poor women. These are women, 99% don't speak English. So when that is possible, because we have to empower women wherever they are, whether at the top or at the bottom, that in decision making, in governance, in running structure. So you have fisher women who are vice chairmen of our board. It doesn't need to be somebody who has an MBA, from an institution in the Americas. So therefore, I think we need to support women's organizations in bringing leadership and decision-making training, also in cooperatives, to make sure that they have input provision, veterinary services, post-harvest services, and transport. How do they get all this? The information from the training. Also in terms of, realistic quotas. Quotas should be there in training programs all over. I'm a great believer in that in these countries where women are having a minus periods at minus. So therefore, some quotas could be useful, whether in extension training or whether in skill training, etc. Also, training for advisory services. And that is very, very important, where gender-sensitive value chains, also developing all of them needs a lot of training. Now, also in terms of training, one of the things we don't look at is the holistic roles of women. I mean, she's having reproductive roles, she's having parent roles and mother's roles. So one of the things that our cooperative planned was
Nandini, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Would you like me to continue? It's rather long. I've gone on to 9 minutes, I believe.
We appreciate, and I think you've given us some very interesting and very practical ideas that are very useful to us. With this said, this is all of the panelists, and this is the information that we have provided. There has been some very good information, particularly here at the end, about innovative structures, financial structures that are suited to women, ensuring that co-ops are really putting women at the center and meeting the needs of these women. The importance of data came up again so that we can better target and focus what is needed. I'd like now, if we could, to please open up to the panel. Sorry, my apologies. We'd like to open up to the audience here to find any questions, comments, anything that you would like to add to the conversation that we're having today. Okay, I have, go ahead, please. Could you just introduce yourself, your name, and your organization, if you are affiliated to one?
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Siran. I'm Sandy Siran. I'm from Haiti, and I'm a teacher and music producer as well. So I'm here today, and I spent all the 3 days hearing honorable ministers, presidents speaking and saying beautiful things. But today, I take this moment much more to heart because I see young people here. And this morning, we're discussing how we can get young people involved in agriculture. And Dr. Karen, the Secretary of CARICOM, was saying that we need young people to involve into agriculture so we can replace the old ones. Now, my question is general. I would love to know how do we plan on doing this? Because if you're looking at nowadays, the time we're living in right now, young people are more gravitated into music production, video production, and as well fashion, all these things. And what I'm talking about now is quick money making. It's you just take your phone, you take a camera, you go on live, and then you generate a bunch of money. Now, having young people transitioning into agriculture, how do we plan on doing that? How do we plan of making agriculture something very interesting that young people can go into it. So take for consideration, agriculture is more into something that you grow up in a household where your parents are doing agriculture and you basically go into it because you were taught how to do it and so on. Like in Haiti as well, what we do, your parents take you in the morning with them when he's going to his farm, and then you go with him, you learn how to do certain things. But we're talking about getting into the mud, into the rain, into the sun and so forth. And now we have young people involving just sitting down in a room, making a music and making $1 million. And we know for sure agriculture don't bring you the money so quick, and the farmers are not very rich people. So again, CARICOM is doing a great job here, and the government of Guyana is doing a great job as well. But how do we get young people to involve into agriculture?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stephen. And thank you for making that link between our session this morning on youth and today and this afternoon's session on women, or gender, actually, because it's a very fluid conversation. Many of the things that we spoke about this morning are extremely relevant to this conversation. I'm going to ask for a few more questions, and then I'm going to hand over to the panelists for their comments to you. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, good morning. My name is Serena Burnett. I'm hearing a whole lot about women and young persons. I'm currently attending Guyana School of Agriculture, and after I finish school, there is not a lot of venues or avenues for young persons to go out and start their own farming or whatever. It's mostly office work. So my question is linked to his, actually. What stop do you guys have in place for young persons when they finish Guyana School of Agriculture? We have the know-how. We don't have access to financing or even land, because the land situation in Guyana, we have to wait 2 or 3 years for housing. How does the ministry or the government of Guyana plan on correcting or fixing these problems? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I am going to take one more question before we go. Okay, we'll start with the 2 questions we have. I like the question about the social media influencers. You're right. I think there are a number of cases of people who make a lot of money very quickly, but I would maybe put it to you that those cases are not as frequent as we all think. We all hear about the 1 or 2 or 3 people who are able to do that, and they're often able to do that in a very short time for a very temporary moment. Somebody earlier in one of the sessions that we had said, we can't eat oil. We need food. So this is always going to be an imperative for us. But I'm going to hand you over to the panelists now. Alistair, Abigail.
Good afternoon again. I cannot speak about getting into agriculture because I'm not in the agriculture sector. I can speak to you about getting into business. Business was never something that I pursued actively. I came out of school and I was working in social protection agency as a counselor, and a need arose and I immediately jumped towards the need and I got into business, and I'm here years later. It has not been an easy road, but I'm glad I chose business. And for those who are interested in your question about after Guyana School of Agriculture, what do you do? If you're going to pursue business, you have to, or agriculture, in business agriculture, you have to jump in it head first. There are avenues that the government of Guyana has in place. Small Business Bureau, where you can make your application, you can be a member of a Small Business Bureau, and you can have loan and grants access to pursue avenues for the development of your business. But note that it is not an easy task. You have to be committed to doing so. You have to be committed to your business plan, developing your businesses, and you have to find organizations that are willing to foster your development. We Lead Caribbean is one of those organizations, ICA, and other organizations here in Guyana. So you have to actively pursue where the help is. You have to run towards the help. And I am sure that you will be able to pursue your career in agriculture further to the School of Agriculture. Thank you.
I don't want to ramble, so let me be quick. As I said before, I don't think this is for everybody. We want entrepreneurs. We want to encourage persons to get into the industry and make an impact. But I think just like Dr. Smith said, we need to recognize that the stories we hear, the success stories, whether it's a footballer or a social media influencer or a singer, they are few and far in between. And I think once we in agriculture or the development agencies are able to highlight the opportunities, we will get the entrepreneurs to come on board. That's the best way to make it attractive. I think also that we are seeing initiatives across the region where ministries and development agencies are trying to make agriculture more attractive. I can share an initiative I see out of Barbados where the Minister of Agriculture is trying to establish a Barbados Innovation Center for Agriculture to highlight how technology can impact agriculture, can make it more productive, to showcase the use of drones and equipment, etc. That really stimulates youth involvement in agriculture. So I can highlight that. In terms of if we're talking about access to markets, as I saw was supposed to be my topic, we as ICA have been discussing with Caribbean Export the opportunity to have an intervention that will target youth and women to access overseas markets, to build their capacity and actually link them with actual buyers. It's a discussion we've been having with FAO as well. And generally, we're trying to put in place trade facilitation interventions that would encourage youth and women to directly engage buyers. And in fact, later this year, we are supposed to have a virtual trade mission that's free of charge to interested persons to actually sit with buyers across the region and extra-regionally to explore the opportunity to get their product outside of their country. So I think it's just to provide opportunities to highlight where persons can make money. And I think that's the best way to make it attractive and get more youth and women involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Heather, Nandini, I'm not sure if you want to respond or any comments.
I will make a comment. Are you hearing me, Jillian?
Hi, this is Nandini here. Can you hear me?
Passion in what was said. I think it's a very good point. You don't have an easy road ahead of you. Young people today do not have an easy road ahead of you. That said, the road is ahead of you. You have more road ahead of you than most of the rest of us have. Most of us, our roads are behind us. There are things and opportunities that are going to be available to you that haven't been invented yet. We don't even have the words to explain them. So we have to encourage you. We encourage you as your parents, your friends, your family, development partners, your government. We all encourage you to be able to keep the course, stay the course, keep hope alive, and continue to look out for the opportunities. The opportunities are going to come, and the opportunities are going to be very clear when your mind is looking for them. Your country needs you. This region needs you. We really do. And I think that that is an important place that you have. I think it's an important power that you have. I think women and youth in particular need to leverage that. One of the most important things that I think was said here is the power of organizing. The things that Nandini talked to us about with the women in India were only achieved through organization and amplifying the voice. And I think this is a very important place. There are programs and there are initiatives and opportunities that are out there. I'm not saying that they are sufficient and enough yet. I'm not even saying that we're doing the best job possible to connect you to those, but they exist. So if nothing else, I would really like to hope and maintain that passion that you have in your voice, and to be sure that that is linked and you continue to move forward and move our region and our countries forward. We are depending on you. One moment. Nandini, are you there? Hedda?
Yes, I think I lost you for a minute.
Yeah.
Are you hearing?
Are you hearing me from India? Can you hear me, Gillian?
I can hear you, Dr. Nandini,
Yes.
but I don't think they're hearing us. Are you hearing us?
Yeah, very well. Thank you. Should I speak, Gillian? Hi. I think the point that Dr. Gillian made was fantastic. She's saying the right thing, that it is the organization of youth, the organization of women into whatever forms. You can make clubs, you can make forums, you can make stakeholder. I think that is the way that, as single people to access things are difficult. But in groups and in formations, it is easier to access many of these things. Now I'm going to take 1 minute and tell you what youth can do. And this is not where you're generating income, but in India, if you go back to the websites, young people who have come from no resource backgrounds are minting billions through organic farming or food processing, value additions, value chains. Please go and look at your YouTubes, go into that. It's amazing, these stories that inspire me at my age to go back to do that sort of thing. Second thing is, I want to tell you the power of youth in agriculture. For example, we run a program called Men and Youth Against Gender Violence. So it's only young men who sit in agricultural communities where there is distress. Clean the field. Clean the field means the public space, so that women in self-help groups can do their business, do their marketing, get their training. And in the same way, they are engaged with getting their communities back into the agriculture mainstream. So if you get into our website, you can find that young people, not only to earn incomes, which is very important, I know, but you can also be part of socially responsible activities, helping those people, and in that way generate an income, not to become a broker and make money on them, but to do value addition, to be part of value chains. Thank you, Gillian.
Nandini. Hedda, you were going to speak, and then I'm going to take a member of the audience.
Are you hearing me now?
Go
Yes?
ahead, Hedda.
Great. I wanted to say that for the young folks today, I completely understand how they're frustrated, and they're in an environment where everything is now, it's instantaneous, but agriculture is not a short distance race. It's not a sprint. It is a long distance race. And I want to encourage the youth by saying that you have so much access to information, and because you have such an open mind and you're so willing to learn, all of this is going to augur very well for you. There is information out there and opportunities to be a part of, engage whether it is your government officials, engage your private sector, engage your fellow youths, and see what programs there are out there, because you have a very open mind, and that alone is going to benefit very well for you as you journey in agriculture and become more successful. But bear in mind, it is not a sprint. Please. So invest and you will do well.
Hedda, I'm going to pass to another member of the audience.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Lamazon here again, representing a co-op society from that background. Of course, there's stress. Of course, there's strength in numbers. As young people here today, as young people here today, we are hearing a lot of advice, which is very good. But what is the resolution? Together we can say with one voice, this is what is our problem, this is what we can find as a solution, a resolution, and then a time frame. Yes, the road is ahead of us, but at the same time, there's a lot of stumbling block. To my learning friend to the front of me, farmers are some of the most wealthiest person on the planet. Not farmers are not rich people, they are very wealthy. But as a collective, the lady before me speak about is not a sprint, it's a long distance. But there's strength in unity. England and China, two of the richest countries you can find, 80% of the wealth grew through collaborative effort, not by singular. And to our women folks and the young ladies in particular, you have a very important role to play in agriculture because you are the sweetening of every single thing that will be made. Because you make a home. So women also advise every male farmer to make sure they do what is required to do. In addition to that, young people, again, we have to stand with one voice. You leave here today, you are interested in agriculture. Do your research. There is NARI, Ministry of Agriculture. Find out what is on the day program. See how you can put yourself in position to be part of that program. And if you find a problem and you know you can find a solution, keep arguing that solution as a collective. Because a single person won't be able to make any impact.
Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to this lady.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nihola Gallego, representing Gunington Sisters Agricultural Association. Ever since the Wales Sugar Estate was closed, we were trying to get assistance in diversifying our lands from sugar to cash crop and other crops. We have lost a great lot due to the closure of the Wales Estate. We have reached out to the Ministry of Agriculture. We have even reached out to FAO in getting our lands plowed, because when we ask the private persons that own tractors, they mostly work with the bigger farmers, the rice farmers. So we don't get them to come and do like a 1 and 2 acre land to plow for us. So we have asked if we could have a tractor through the Ministry of Agriculture, which would be a great investment for us. It would not only help us to plow the land, it can take fertilizer in the bottom, mold, bring out our produce, but to no avail, we have not yet received even a feedback as to whether or not they have received the letter or anything from us. And I have received call from the FAO that they're working on it, but I don't know when this would come true or so. And it has been over 3 years since we have met out to the FAO. We have met out under the previous administration to the Minister of Agriculture. We also did so again under this administration, and we have not yet received any assistance or anything. So at the moment, we're willing, there is a land there, it's sitting there, persons are willing to go into farming, but we need assistance.
Nicola, thank you very much, and really thank you for your very frank input here. I think this is what is important, having this sort of frank dialogue. And importantly, what we want to be able to do with you is to work with you about changing your strategy. Because if something we're doing isn't working, let's figure out what we can do to start finding the solution we want. Let's talk afterwards. There's a young lady here who would like to contribute as well.
Good day, everyone. My name is Akila Harding. I am a grade 10 science student at St. Stanislaus College. And my question to the panel today is, so it's no secret that agriculture as a whole is stigmatized among young people. When you think agriculture, of course, there's farming and working out in farms and so on and so forth. And when you think about it, it's not something that a lot of young people want to do. However, I would still like to participate in agriculture in some way because I admire the goal. So my question is, what are some job opportunities available like right now here in Guyana pertaining to agriculture that do not include going out into the fields? And if they are available, what are some steps that I should be taking right now that would open up these doors for me in the near future? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to ask Abigail to take that last question because Abigail talked a little bit about business and taking things from a business point of view. I'm then also going to ask if we can wrap up because we are a little bit over time now, but it's been a very interesting conversation. Abigail, over to you, please.
Thank you. Non-traditional jobs, non-traditional things that you can do in agriculture. What is the problem? And that's the first thing you need to think about. What's the problem in Guyana when it comes to agriculture? And then you need to create a solution to that problem, whatever it is. I've seen solutions in technology for agriculture. It's not something that you have to get into the fields to do in terms of drone operation. Up till yesterday, I was outside and I saw Massey had a drone that was putting out fertilizers onto the fields, and they had drone operators who were doing that. So I would encourage you to think of things that are affecting the agriculture sector and look at how you can create non-traditional solutions to those problems. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I maybe just want to quickly round up. Somebody sent me okay. David, please go ahead.
Thank you. I sat in on the last two sessions today, and I just wanted to share on behalf of the youths of the Caribbean, and in particular in Guyana, some of the things that I made note of. One is the need, as the young lady mentioned from your panel, that financial literacy is very important. Now, all of these things, I want to challenge the policymakers and the people working in the NGOs and CARICOM Secretariat to find the solutions, because the young people want solutions. When we get together like this, we talk, but in the end, the solutions are what makes the difference to them. Schools' curriculums must have an element of money management and simple business management. Because in the end, if you're getting into agriculture as a farmer, you need to know a little bit of business management. Subsidized loans for young people must be dealt with. It must be given, and it must be done in a manner that is unsecured at low interest rates in order for them to start. Land availability is something that is always a problem, but we need to have this dealt with. The need for mentors, the need for production inputs subsidized by government or NGOs, like the young lady up there said. She has a problem. She has 1 acre of land as a group, but she doesn't have anyone to help her to plow it. Technical service training is a must and must be continuous. Information on products and production, the things that are available and opportunities available. Information on extension services must be really heightened in supporting these groups, and they must be found and identified. Information, continuous support must be given, and the continuous support I had told NGO group before, a lot of the projects are like 3 years. When you're in agriculture or any business, the 3rd year is the most difficult year for you, is the make or break year. And so this support must continue beyond 3 years. I would say at least 5 years. That means that someone holding your hand until you get to that point. Organizing groups is very important. Your panelists from India had said that. I think that's very important. working together like Jamaica, the women's groups in Jamaica, that's very important as well. Cooperatives, land ownership for women especially, and young men as well, is a big problem. Microfinancing, I mentioned that before, empowering young people. And in the end, it's about feeding the nation and the Caribbean. And as the young lady from Saint said, that not many young people want to get into agriculture. And that's because we're not putting the necessary mechanisms in place to support them and their efforts. Thanks.
David, thank you. And as you can see, the audience appreciates it. You've just made my life much easier by doing an excellent, excellent summary. I think these are, if you would permit me, the key takeaways that we as this panel and we as the persons who are participating in this dialogue want to take back to our heads of government, to our ministers, to our development partners and agencies. We have immediate issues and we have longer term issues, and I think we have really identified those fairly well. I want to thank, first of all, Minister Waldron for being here and participating and really setting the tone for us in the context, as well as ASG Cox. I want to thank very much our 4 panelists, Alistair, Abigail, Hedda, and Nandini. Thank you very much for giving us some thought-provoking ideas to contemplate and to start our conversation. And I would very, very much like to thank you, the audience, particularly the persons who shared with us their passions, their frustrations, their ideas. This is what we need. I know sometimes it feels like we're not getting anywhere. I know sometimes it feels like we're just saying the same thing over and over. You know, we're going to keep saying them and doing them. We're going to keep changing our strategy until we get it right, because we really don't have a lot of different options. We are all, most of us, we are citizens of the CARICOM. This is where we're born and grow. This is what our heritage is. This is what we have more than anything else. We don't have any entitlements to anything else. Somebody said in the heads of government meeting that we are in an ever deepening food security crisis in the world. It's not getting better anytime soon, and no one is coming to save us. We have to save ourselves. There is an imperative and a sense of urgency. So we maybe end with that, and thank you all very much for your time. This is the last session of this investment forum, and I would like to perhaps, on behalf of all of the organizers, thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for your time and for your thoughts and your efforts. And I want to really urge you to go out and in any capacity that you find yourself, please remember our goal as the Caribbean is 25 by 25. This requires all hands on board, as ASG Cox said. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a good evening.